Okay, good evening. Welcome to this inaugural meeting of the Councillor's Trustee of Georgina Maddox Charitable Trust. Monday the 13th of July, 7 o'clock, or just on the past. In terms of apologies, I'm aware that Councillor Morehouse is unable to attend. I think we have then got a full house beyond that. Oh, sorry, Councillor Pennington. I haven't received any apologies from Councillor Pennington. Local Town Park has either.
No, we've got Mrs. Thomas, Margaret Thomas as well. Margaret Thomas?
Yes, sorry, you're right. Yes, Margaret Thomas as well. Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members of respective business to be transacted on the agenda. Do we have any from this evening? If not, we'll move on. Okay, so tonight, this is very much a scene setting for the charity. A lot about receiving documentation, not necessarily to be debating them in depth, but that will become clear as we go through each of the agenda items. Councillor Breen has done the vast majority of work on the content for tonight's meeting, so I'll pass my appreciations in advance. And as a consequence, I hope he's got water with him. Yes, he has, because Councillor Green will be talking a lot in terms of the documentation as we go through them. But I'm half expecting, whilst there's a lot of items to get through, actually it's at a level which should hopefully mean we can move at a certain pace. So, thank you very much. The first agenda item beyond that is number 3, which is minutes, and so that was in advance of a charity administrator being appointed to the trustee to agree responsibility for taking the minutes of this first meeting. And Councillor Breen has offered to do that this evening, and I hope people are happy to support that, and if they are, I'm happy to propose that Councillor Breen does the minutes. Second. I propose Councillor P. Carter is seconded, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. The next agenda item is review the action log. There are no actions recorded at this moment, so we can move on from that item. Right, so the first meaningful agenda item is number 5, and that's communication with local community organisations. I'm not aware of any requests for anybody to speak this evening. Town Park, have you received any? No. So that's fine. Okay. I just would want to point out, and I think the agenda itself gives an indication of this. So for future meetings, this isn't where the public comes in, and we will touch on that when we get to the standing orders, probably around the public element of this. But this is where local community organisations that may have an interest in the Maddox Fund want to come and talk to the trustee. So that's the purpose of this agenda slot. It is not a public participation in the widest sense that you are familiar with in terms of council business. It's worth noting. Agenda item 6. Sorry,
Chair. Also to receive any communications that members of the trustee have received from local community organisations that they may wish to bring to the attention, because at the end of the day the beneficiaries of this charity are local community organisations, groups and other good causes. So I think it's important that at the beginning of the meeting we consider any communications that individual members have received. Wants to speak.
Should we perhaps in this item have people that have been awarded grants, they can reply that how they spent the grants or not, or is there a time limit on the grant being spent? Because
there will
we're
be.
worried about what I talk about it at the moment, but there's a grant now we're worried about.
Okay, so in terms of grants and discharge of them and meeting any considerations on them, and also in terms of following up, that will all fall within the administrator's role to manage, and then there will be agenda items that will specifically pick that up, but it wouldn't be sort of built into this part of the agenda.
No.
It will happen.
I understand, yeah, we've got to report back, make sure the members been spent correctly. You see the receipts, sir?
Yes.
Yes, correct, okay, thank you.
Councillor Black.
Well, I came at it from a very different perspective. One of my points was that nowhere in the standing orders is any way to celebrate something that has worked well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that is one of the purposes of section 5, then I welcome that, but I think that would be very helpful to clarify that in the minutes. Because certainly the one that I was concerned about, which is the using your camera phone for social prescribing purposes, I've had a report from the person who's reading that. That person has been extremely complimentary about the group that she's already been leading, and she's learned a few lessons from that, but we hope we may be able to get a couple of exhibitions out of that. Because at the moment, we do need to celebrate these. It's not just that a grant has been awarded, it's the impact of that grant. And if that's the purpose of this, then I really welcome it, but it should be clarified a bit more, I suggest.
I'd be quite happy to respond to that. At the moment, we'll be moving on to the trustee governor code and so forth, and one of the things is to demonstrate public benefit, and so that is an item that we'll be picking up as we move forward in the day-to-day stable operation of the fund.
May I respond? Well, I actually raised that under 6D later on, that there is nothing about celebrating or publicising success. And that's on page 78 of all this 220 odd pages. So if that's the case, then I think the wording 6D will need to be improved, or not improved, but modified.
That's fine, Ricky.
We'll come on to that when we get to that point. As I said at the start, it's very much about scene setting, and there's going to be opportunities for comments to be fed through after this meeting, and to then improve and move towards finalising documentation over time. So this is the first step, and any comments like that are very valuable, and celebrating the success is really integral to what we're about, I think.
Okay, sorry, just before you go on, I must report that Father Sebastian has approached me, basically looking for sponsorship for the Jubilee Centre for on a longer term basis, on the basis that it was a primary wish of Georgina that she would provide a community hub, and on the basis that the users of the Jubilee Centre don't really have the funds to pay an economic rent. The boxing club of the youth, the pantry.
The shed.
I'm not going to touch on the pantry, but the shed. But the pantry is obviously, a social service, as is the mothers and toddlers. So Father Sebastian is interested in the Maddox Fund listening to an approach for the long-term funding, which will then help attract other funding and secure the Jubilee Centre going forward. So I think, out of respect, at some stage when he's ready to make a formal proposal, that we should give him an agenda item at that time.
I did run the youth club for 18 years, and she was my secretary, so I know she's been very involved with South Youth. But I don't think we should do permanent, I think we should do an annual request.
Yeah, I think we should
Because we should study what's happening up there, so we're not going to prop up something that could possibly be a failing thing.
Yeah. Okay, so tonight's meeting isn't about debating applications or
No, it's
anything.
not, no.
I think it's worth flagging up that there is an interest, and we'll wait to see what we receive. But it will need to be managed effectively, because we already know we've had 3 or 4 attempts at getting big amounts of money from the fund, and we as a trustee are responsible for the charity first, not about accepting and meeting every demand on its money. So feedback is, please work on the report that we'll bring into the meeting at subsequent
And
points.
is it to be brought to the management meeting or to the full trustee meeting?
Well,
I
it
would
can
say
only
the
be-
full trustee.
Yes, it can only be a full trustee discussion.
I think a lot of their problem is the overheads.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Can I move on now?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, agenda item 6, Key Documents and Management Committee. So attachment 6, trustee to receive and note a copy of the governing documents. So I think you've got some comments on this, Councillor Green.
Yeah, a copy of the governing document is attached to the minutes. Unfortunately, it's come out as track changes, so I will take an action to send out a clean copy of the document to everybody, and individually, and so that it's not buried amongst all the big collection of papers for tonight.
Can I make a suggestion? So, apologies, if it's possible, so for each, obviously with the trustees, so it would be a good idea to have a file, so we have the standing orders in that file, the constitution, so everything's in one place, and each of the councillors got that in a file for our laptops.
We discussed that this morning. I think Councillor Green will touch on that as we proceed. It's a good suggestion, shared by others. Okay. The only thing I was going to just flag up in terms, and thanks that you'll share that with us, at point 10 in there, it talks about new members of the council. Well, obviously we're going through a by-election at the moment, so let's not lose sight that the new council member will also be a trustee, and documentation should be made available to them when they arrive, if it's ready, I suppose. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to 6A, trustee to receive. So actually, what are you wanting us to vote on, the one we've just covered, Councillor Green?
Well, that is just to note, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'd like to propose that we receive and note a copy of the governing documents. Councillor seconded. Vote on that. That's unanimous as well. Thank you. 6A, trustee to receive and act on the Charity Governance Code 2025.
Okay, look, you just kind of mentioned training. This document, this Charity Governance Code, which is published in 2025, as you say, it will kind of form the basis for training for councillors or members. And you can see that within that there are 8 principles. And I would just draw your attention to the fact that for each of the principles, there is a section within the document which talks about providing the evidence and assurance. So that then is really helping us to understand what we need to provide. So for the time being, it's something for us to note. I'm going to ask the new charity administrator to see if they can get a hold of hard copies of this document, because I think this is a very important training document for us as new members, new trustees of this fund, and for any new councillor that's elected.
Thank you. If there's no comments, I'd like to propose that we receive and act upon that code. Councillor Ripley has seconded. To vote on that. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Attachment 6B, the trustee to receive and approve standing orders.
Okay, so this is the first draft really of the standing orders, to get a set of standing orders in place. We are obliged by the Charity Commission to have everything in place within 10 months, so by the end of March next year. So I'd ask you to carefully read, carefully read the standing orders, which sets out the roles of the trustee, the chair of the trustee, the members of the trustee, and the charity management committee, are the structure that we're going to adopt, the composition of the committees, and the meeting processes and procedures. And as the chair pointed out earlier, there isn't a provision for public recordings of meetings, so comments like this I would welcome. If people would like to feed these back, we can rework these standing orders over the next 6 months, but in the interim you're being asked to accept these standing orders as kind of an interim measure as work in progress.
So I've got just 2 points. One is around the quorum aspect. So it talks about quorum for the meeting, but I'm acutely aware that people have interests from an individual organisation perspective. So we should build into standing orders something around when a meeting has much reduced numbers, because the quorum will fail. I'm certain with some of the discussions, so we need to have a facility to have the capacity to continue the meeting, or else meetings will have to stop. So that's one aspect. And you touch on the point, it is very rare for charities to have meetings in public, except for maybe an annual general meeting, etc. We need to consider how we run this, because we are not the council, we are a charity. Much of the conversations will be around sensitive information, will be around strategy, and it is typically a case that the public do not attend, nor are the meetings filmed. I'm just laying that out. It's important that what we don't do is follow just because it's been done before for the STBF. The STBF is very different from this charity, and we are trying to do this in a certain way, I think. So, Councillor Reid first, and then Councillor.
So maybe we can make a suggestion here and now, at least, make from now on, after we've set this up, making the meetings private.
I think we should do it in a managed, sensible way, because there may be different opinions. So I'm just floating that there, and we can bring that in the next discussion on the standing orders. It's important to recognise that. Councillor Russell.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before. I've been a trustee of a funding charity, and there was no particular reason why we should hold our meetings in public, and we certainly didn't. But what I would say is that there is a distinction between this kind of meeting, where we're talking about the administration of the charity, where I think on transparency grounds it might be a good idea for the town to be able to observe us doing our business in a proper and accountable way. But I do think very strongly that when we come to consider grant applications and anything to do with individual grants, that has to be business conducted in confidence, because people can get very upset about what is said about their organisation. We are a small town, and I really don't think it would be appropriate for us to do that kind of business in public.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Marie. I think they should be private. I've been involved at least 3 big charities in Sandwich, and they're always public, because sometimes some things are said, and sometimes it comes up, then you have to go, if it's public, yeah, then you have to go private. And I think people, the actual committee meeting should be a private meeting between the committee members.
So I think we need to work it through. It's not about the knee-jerk reaction tonight, I think, but I think we're trying to run this properly as a separate charity from the council. As you say, and through experience, these meetings are normally done not in the public case, and certainly not with public attending.
Yeah, the thing is, because it's a small little town also, and if sometimes you might object, you might suddenly get a hassle in the street, which you've had before.
It's possible.
So I think that's why it should be a private meeting.
There's a number of considerations.
Yeah.
Councillor.
I think we have to remember that the money was left to Sandwich Town Council. There was no mention of a charity being set up. That's something that's happened since Georgina's death. So I think people in the town will expect openness wherever possible. And clearly, meetings have to be confidential when we're talking about applicants and personal data.
Let's discuss it. Let's work it through in terms of how we might approach it. But back to my point is, it's a charity here. And we do behave and should behave differently from a council. So just need to bear that in mind. Councillor Reid, did you want to come back?
The only other thing I just wanted to say, you'll see within the standing orders that there's provisions for meetings over the internet using something like Teams, because this is looking forward, that's what the Charity Commission do. These standing orders are based on the Charity Commission's standing orders, and with using Teams and so forth, they can do transcripts and summarise the minutes. So that's something for the future. But just to note.
The thing is, I'm also on another charity, and it's private meetings, but some residents that's been affected by the charity. I have been stopped in the street, and it's all done by the committee basically. So really, and I'm representing Sandwich Town Council on this particular committee, but I do get a bit of hassle about some of the decisions that are made.
And that takes us back to the point about grant giving can be quite emotive, and that's certainly one aspect we've already dealt with in confidence generally.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no other material comments,
I do have, under 4.9,
Sorry, could we, if there are specific comments, could you drop me a note on them, please, and then we've got them.
well, it's just about the charity administrator in general, because the standing orders assume that we will always need a charity administrator. And I have to say that it may not be going forward in the very long term, it may not be necessary, and that if there were an extra clause like a charity administrator will normally be appointed, in normal circumstances be appointed, indicating it doesn't actually have to happen. You don't actually have to have a charity administrator.
it's been noted, thank you.
So this is Chris, I was going to answer that.
We have got the opportunity to comment on this, and I think therefore take time.
We need to realise that the council does not run this charity. We run the charity. That's why we need an administrator. We can't give it to the town clerk because it's not her job.
No, I'm not suggesting.
But there may be other models that we could adopt in the future as a trustee. So, yeah. Okay, so I would like to propose that we receive and approve the standing orders as an interim measure.
Second.
Councillor Rees, that's unanimous as well, thank you. Moving on to the financial regulations again to receive and approve these. Councillor Green?
Yes, again, these are a kind of a stripped down, simple set of regulations which basically set out the policy and then set out auditable actions that needed to be undertaken to comply with the policy. They're a lot simpler than the financial regs for Sandwich Town Council and the Toll Bridge Fund because we don't have a finance officer and so forth. But again, these are interim measures so that we can get up and running, and if anybody has any comments, please feed them through.
Yes, there is nothing in the financial regulations that indicates whether or not the charity should normally spend the income from the investments, the full income, or whether the charity should decide. I mean, under 4.1, under budgeting, it says the trustee should agree an annual budget. But how far will that annual budget reflect what has actually been the income of the year, of probably the previous year?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I had it in mind that there's going to be an investment strategy which will talk about the investments and the growth and the earnings and what would be made available. So that's a separate document that is still to be developed.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
I think Councillor Lang's point is well made, but is that not really a function of the budget setting every year? Because you'll have some idea of what you've already got in reserve. You can then make in the budget decision whether you add to reserves, draw down on the reserves. But I would suggest that this is an integral part of the budget setting for a particular year.
I understand, and I think it's like a lot of these documents, there are overlaps, and I think there's going to be an overlap between the investment strategy and the budgeting, as is there is an overlap between the conflict of interest policy and the quorum for meetings. So this is why we need to develop all of these documents and then do the kind of the horizontal sweep through. But I take your point.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to add that we need to make a decision as to whether we want the fund itself to grow or whether we would expect and therefore make savings every year that we can reinvest. or whether we expect normally to spend the whole of the income.
Again, that's something that I have in mind to cover in the investment strategy, because we've certainly, I think, learnt from the toll bridge fund, where in real terms the value of the fund has depleted.
Yes.
And I think when you see the investment strategy, when they get round to writing it, we will want to protect the real value of the fund and make the surplus, which is not just the interest or the dividends, but the growth in value of the shares over and above inflation, to make that available for budgeting purposes.
I was just going to point out that I would suggest, and I know it's town council not, but normally the financial regs are sort of more foundational than an investment strategy, and so therefore if we want to have a strong policy, or you want to have a strong policy going forward, that would be good to have included in the financial regs as being more robust than the investment policy, but it's entirely up to trustee.
I mean, it's a fair point to make, because when we first talked about this, we did come to a consensus that the fund should be there in perpetuity. So the only way it can be there in perpetuity is that it is protected and it does grow, at least in line with inflation. So there are some principles that we should start with, and then see how that actually manifests itself technically in terms of investment growth, funds awarded, etc. And all of that should be in the investment strategy for us to discuss.
Because just as the financial regs, it's got a policy, so those policy statements about perpetuity, about only spending, what's available through over and above inflation and so forth, those are some of the key policy statements to go into the investment strategy. They can by all means be repeated in the financial regs.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say also, we haven't got any ability to govern the applications. So if we had a very lean year, although we might have £40,000 in the pot, if we only had half a dozen or less applications, there might be a necessity that there would be surplus capital left over. So these are all things that I think we've got to work through, haven't we, as you said yourselves.
I said we shouldn't discuss the toll bridge fund, because sometimes major investments are took out of that, so at the end you think, oh, that made massive, but it's been expensive on the building, and there will most probably in the future be massive amounts of money taken out of the toll bridge fund to bring some of the structures in the town, including steel.
And that is a fair point, and there is a story about the toll bridge fund, and tonight's not about the toll bridge fund, but what I would say is when the toll bridge fund was set up, its number one requirement was, again, to be a fund that would continue to be protected over time. So that's right up front. And there is a story as why that hasn't happened, but it hasn't.
We've had some major repairs on the buildings.
Okay, so we could move on from that one. So it's the trustee to receive and approve financial regulations. I have to propose that. Councillor P. Carter has seconded. Vote on that. That's unanimous as well. Thank you. 60, trustee to receive and approve committee terms of reference.
Okay, so this is basically an update of the terms of reference that was in place for the management committee, and it's, as you see in the document, if there are any comments, again, please let us have them. I don't think there's going to be a meeting of this management committee before the next trustee meeting. Please.
Councillor Reeve.
Can I just ask, is it going to be the same? Is it going to be the same committee members as it was previously? Because if not, then I'd like to put the name forward again.
That's the next agenda item. Next, so yes, Councillor Back.
Again, I'll just reiterate, if you look under reporting on page 78 of the document, I do think that a duty should be to celebrate. So we've got monitor the charity progress, and I think B, or whether it's B1 and B2, to arrange to meet on an annual basis with a local organisation established. And I think celebrating success is a critical feature of this management committee.
Yes, so fine. So the first step here is to receive and approve committee terms of reference, which I'll propose.
Second.
Councillor Reid.
Is that with the amendment, suggested
Yes,
amendment?
yes, sorry, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Unanimous. And then the second step is to elect 6 members for the management committee. I think within terms of reference, it refers to the mayor being included on that committee, does it not? Yeah, so I think that's five more volunteers or pressed men. Start with volunteers, shall we? If you've got more than 5, then we'll have to have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would take us to 7. Is there any reason?
I don't want to be on it.
No, okay.
Not on it, but just wanted to bear in mind that you've got 4 people who are the nominee people for EH, EFG, how to
Yes.
say.
One of them hasn't volunteered,
And who was that? You haven't volunteered.
because I'm assuming so many others want to do it. But I'm happy to volunteer if push comes to
So
shove.
the argument is that you must be on it, or you should be on it, or it.
I think it's to be considered because those are the people that will be being called on to do all the actions with the bank and with the. So anyway, it's to be considered. But I just wanted to flag it.
I mean, I'm happy to volunteer on
All
that
right,
basis.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor,
So
Councillor
the
Mayor.
4 people are yourself,
Right, yes.
And myself, and who is the chairs of the finance committee?
Finance
Chair of
and
the-
STBF finance
Yeah.
chairs.
Yeah.
They're all new councillors, though, aren't they? I'm not saying that they're all new councillors, they've only been on the council 3 years. I think you do need people on this committee that's got experience of the town, and there's different organisations in the town.
4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Okay.
So I think we need more, really experienced councillors as well.
Who's on the current committee?
I think I feel like I'm an experienced councillor, but
Who's
maybe I'm not.
Who's on the current committee or the previous committee?
How many-
So, yes. So in terms of the current committee, show of hands, who's currently on it?
You are, yes, Mayor.
Right. And of those, anybody standing down? No. So that's 2, 4, 6, 7. Councillor Black has been suggested to be included. That would take us to 8. Is there any reason why we can't have 8? From
Well, I was going to suggest.
It says a minimum of,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
I
Doesn't
mean,
say
yeah,
maximum.
I mean, if we change the numbers, then fine. I just didn't want to exclude somebody who was very keen.
So thank you very much. And Councillor Anderson, would you like to be on this as well?
I would.
Sorry, actually, in this meeting, should I call you Councillor Anderson, or is Christian Names okay? Because we are a trustee, so it's.
But we're only trustees because we are councillors.
No, well, no. That's true.
But we're not here as councillors.
No, we're not here as
But
councillors.
we are councillors, and the only reason we're here is that we're councillors. But
Let's not waste too much time. I'll stay where I am. Okay, so I think we've agreed on new membership. I think.
Can I just ask a question, sorry, Chair? So regarding, obviously, we've got big elections coming up next year. So
Yeah.
when the elections happen, and if people are not standing, so I know there's some people in this room that are not be standing for next year, they will obviously be taken off the committees.
Of course.
Yeah, as trustees.
You can only be.
And in
You
management.
can only be a trustee unless there is anybody co-opted in. Again, we'll talk about that, but that almost certainly is likely to be without voting rights. Okay, so I'd like to propose those names. You've got all the names, have you?
Happy to second.
Could you read them out?
Well, it's Emmett, Colin, Claire, Ian, Paul, Danielle, Jeff, Dean, and myself.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Policies, agenda item 7. Firstly, 7A, trustees receive a report on town clerk on the draft conflict of interest policy. Sophie.
Really, it's mostly there. Just that the conflict of interest policy that Councillor Green has drafted, we can, if once the trustee has approved it, the Charity Commission advised the best thing was to submit it as a draft conflict of interest policy, and then after, if the trustee wanted. It was reviewed by a solicitor, then to resubmit it after it's been through the solicitor's process. So yeah, that's it really. The Girlings have advised that they would charge £500 plus VAT for reviewing and amending a draft prepared by the trust, and whether or not you would like to go ahead with that, and then what further support you would like from solicitors for what policies, basically.
Thank you very much. So there are some recommendations, but before we go to those, just one thing, just there's an erroneous title to this agenda item, which probably needs to be corrected in the recorded item. So it's actually STBF has sneaked into my version. I don't know if anybody else has got the same as well. Obviously, it should be GM. CT. Yep, it's not me, is it? Going
Conflict of interest. I've got GM conflict of interest policy.
Yeah, that's fine. It's the actual agenda item number I've got is STBF 06.67. Yeah, so
Yeah, it is, yes.
revised. So, any comments on it at all? If not, we'll go to recommendations. No. Okay, so the first recommendation is to adopt the draft conflict of interest policy subject to any amendments agreed at the meeting. Well, there are none, so proposing.
Second.
No, thank you. Second one, to authorise the town clerk to submit the adopted policy to the charity commission following the meeting.
Oppose.
Secondly.
Vote on that. That's done. That's unanimous. To instruct Girling solicitors to review the adopted policy and provide any recommended amendments. I'll propose that. So the second. Councillor Fortescue. Vote on that. That's unanimous. Next one is to consider whether further legal support should be commissioned from Girling solicitors in relation to the trust governance framework. You probably need to quantify that in a bit more detail, because that's two very good recommendations to adopt. So is there anything pressing that we need Girlings to do for us at the moment?
Well, it was Councillor Green on the agenda put various policies, some of which would be more immediate than others: an investment policy, updated grant making, and trustee training. And then after that, there's the further 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
So, which of those you feel require solicitor support, and which could be,
I think the key policies are kind of the investment, the grant making, and the trustee training, together with the conflicts of interest, because I think those policies will need to be registered with the charity commission.
Yes.
The other policies about the data protection, I think, are more day-to-day administration stuff, and shouldn't really, in my mind, need us to instruct a solicitor to review them.
Seems reasonable. Yeah, so what we're proposing here is that further legal support will be sought from Girlings as appropriate in relation to the investment policy, the updated grant making, and the trustee training, with the conflicts of interest which we've already identified.
Happy to second that.
Vote on that. Subject to relevant considerations. Yeah, okay. One abstention. Thank you. So in terms of what we've just covered here, that's all covered in the report itself, isn't it? You've got all the decisions you need.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 8. So the first one is attachment 8A, the trustee to receive and approve a budget for 26-27. Councillor Green, would you like to talk us through that?
Yeah, you can see we've prepared a budget here which amounts to £165,000 for the first year. There's monies aside budgeted for establishing the charity, and then for the support to the charity administrator, and the investment manager fees, the grants and awards, and you can see that we've budgeted 80,000 for that, 13,000 for the piano, and then there are some estimates for operational costs and a little bit of contingency. So this amounts to 165,000, which I think is more than we would normally want to spend in any 1 year, when we would typically want to spend about 4% of the fund, and as the fund is over 3 million, this represents about 5%, but I think it's understandable that in the first year we would have some additional costs. And as I say, it's budget, it's not authorisation to spend the monies per se, although you know, those expenditures will all come before the trustee in due course.
Okay, any comments?
Yes, I'm wondering what the expectation is for a charity administrator to work 2 days a week for 6 months. Do you really think that those 2 days a week work involved?
I certainly think so at the moment, to put everything in place and to set our stall out correctly in the initial period. I think that's necessary.
It's not, I mean, given that we've just decided that we're going to send the policies to the solicitors for their review, just does seem a lot of hours for, and I'm not quite sure what for.
Surely that's just a maximum figure, she would be less than that, wouldn't it?
It can be less, it's not a commitment to it.
Yeah.
Oh, right, so it does say 2 days a week for 6 months and then
That's-
1 day.
Yes, so that's the estimate that's been arrived at by Councillor Breen in terms of what is possibly needed, but as Councillor Franklin says, the reality could be less than
I
that.
mean, I just want to say that it is obviously a principle of charitable endeavour that
Yeah.
we do try to keep administrative costs as low as possible in order to be able to spend as much as possible on whatever the charity is subject to do.
Agree. It's got to be the principle.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly what Councillor Franklin said is, you know, we need to set a budget, and if we come below that budget, then that's good news, and hopefully Councillor Breen has done his homework and worked out how much time we need, and I found it to be very sensible myself.
Just be careful that you don't put something in a contract of employment about 2 days and 1 day.
No.
You'll need to be extremely careful about that one.
I don't think they're going to work by days, I think they're just going to book hours.
Whichever way they do it, I'm suggesting, let's be careful about it.
Sorry, Councillor Black, just reminded that we're on camera, so some of this needs to be kept confidential stuff, if we're going to talk about hours and pay grades and stuff.
Oh no, I'm not talking about anything about that. All I said was be careful about contractual hours or days. That's all. I don't propose to talk any more about the details.
We'll come to that at the point in terms of the recruitment cycle. That's right. Certainly at the moment, we're well ahead of that. It's a fair point to make.
Happy to propose the year 1 budget.
Yeah.
Happy to second that.
Abstaining again.
One abstention. Trustee to receive a report on the establishment of a bank account and receipt of monies for the Maddox Charitable Trust.
Sorry, the second part of the
5 year.
Oh, sorry, did you want, yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, well, we were only being asked to approve, but yes, there is a 5-year view on this, so if you want to comment on that.
There's a 5-year view that's been prepared by the finance officer, which basically takes a view on the costs that I kind of know, but the model doesn't show any increase in the core fund, and it just works on the basis that the portfolio income will just be 3%. So it's of interest, and I think it could be noted. But in terms of approving for us to work to, I don't think it's appropriate.
Well, I'm pleased to hear you say that, because, I mean, it doesn't relate to the later report from Harris Allday, where they say the target income is 120,000 per annum.
Mm.
So, you know, there's that anomaly about this 5-year budget, which doesn't, as I say, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Not the same as the intention of the fund manager.
I did get the data from the fund manager. I rang them up and said, what should we anticipate?
Over
And
5
they
years.
said 3%, if you budget 3%.
Right.
So that's what he said.
Because they actually put in their document, investment requirements and objectives under that section A. They say income requirements, state or target income per annum, and somebody, presumably then, has written in 120,000.
No, that's, I've put in that 120,000. And I think we need to be very clear about what we mean about income, whether it's interest from investment funds, or whether it's
That's what we
dividends
mean.
from investment funds, or whether it's real value growth in the portfolio. And when the investment manager was here at a management committee meeting, he was pleased to report that the fund had grown 13.5% in the last year. So if we're spending about 4% annually, 4 or 5%, and inflation is doing 4% or the likes, we're still, you know, spending within the overall income or growth or yield, to use the correct expression, of the fund.
Thank you. Okay.
Are we on 8B? Is that?
Yes.
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 Under commentary on.
Sorry, no, we were
On
just,
eight
we were
A.
sort of
Eight A.
edging away from 8A,
Okay.
but not quickly.
Right.
Oh, we can hold your breath, yeah. We don't need to propose anything,
Oh, I was
we've
just
already
gonna note
proposed the
it.
budget,
Okay.
and yeah, it was commentary from,
Yeah.
that's fine. So now we go on to 8B.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Well, on commentary on findings, Virgin and HSBC offer free banking. CAF and UTB, they charge
They do, yes.
£6 or £7 a month. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
But it's not absolutely clear from what
I apologise about that, but if you look at the following document where the different banks are laid out, you will see the kind of the charges set out there.
Yes. I
Yes,
did,
as
I did check about where banks have their branches, and the nearest HSBC branch is in Canterbury.
and there's one in Western Cross as well.
Yes. But they distinguish between hubs and banks that where you can actually speak to somebody.
Well, you can speak to somebody at Western Cross.
There's another charity involved that you bank at HSBC in Canterbury.
Councillor Carter?
Yes, so I just wanted to make a technical notice that I've got an account with Virgin Bank, and they have recently been bought out by the Nationwide.
So what I would like is maybe Councillor Green, just maybe just to cover your rationale for choice, and then we can look at recommendations.
Well, kind of current accounts are current accounts in many respects, but you can see here the features that I was kind of particularly interested in. One important one is the changing signatories, because as we move forward in the years to come and the members of the council change, then there will be a need to have a clear mechanism and an easy mechanism for changing signatories. The other thing that I was interested in was the fact that you could actually go and talk to somebody locally, and the HSBC did that. And then the final thing is that besides the mandated users, HSBC will allow up to 99 secondary users. So every member of the trustee can see in real time what's in the bank. If they know the app on the phone, they can look in. So on that basis, I was recommending that we Councillor Chuka and myself, try and open a bank account in the first instance, We can add others then once the bank account is opened. But if we have any difficulty in getting the account established, that we're authorised to approach one of the other banks. So that is the proposal.
Can I, one thing, the second proposal for HSBC one, also, the 4 signatories, I reckon, suggested to be the same signatories as for the Harris all-day stuff. So then the mayor, deputy mayor, and the 2 finance chairs. Minimum for the first 4, then it's the primary is
minimum of
4.
2.
Ah, so it could be 4.
Yes.
And the administrators.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that comment.
You could argue that for avoiding well, fraud, I mean not fraud, but in terms of creating firewalls, you could have separate signatories, and that might be actually better, because then you've got one doing that and one not doing that, and the 2 can't talk to each other.
I agree. Better
So
government.
it's just recommendation to go with HSBC.
Yes, so in terms of what we've been asked to do tonight, we're not, I'm just checking, we're not being asked to identify the names for that, are we, as recommendation? I've got 4 recommendations in front of me. So the first is, given the features above, it's recommended to open the account with HSBC. You seconded that, I propose it. So the vote for HSBC, if we're okay with that. That's unanimous, thank you. Second is, in the event of any difficulties, the trustee is asked to nominate a reserve bank.
I'd like to propose Virgin.
I'm happy to second that.
Nationwide in the town.
Yeah. Okay. The third recommendation, councillors Tuke and Green are authorised to open the accounts. Somebody has to do it, and I'm happy to do it with councillor Green.
Happy to propose that.
Somebody have to second that. Councillor Miles, the second is. And the fourth recommendation, trustee is asked to nominate any other members to be rendered as primary users once the account is up and running, bearing in mind that the charity administrators will need to be mandated.
And what we've said is that would be the other 2 people, Councillor Colin Wiles and Ian Black. And the administrators.
So we have to propose that. Second, councillor Ripley. Thank you.
Chair, just with the elections in May, I hope there isn't going to be a shortage of signatures instead of council, or resign, or people that are standing down. I was going to suggest that perhaps if the councillors know they're going to stand down, perhaps they should be a signatory.
I'm not sure that none of them are standing down.
No, I'm just saying that.
I'm not sure.
Well, it's easy to change online.
Yeah.
That's one
Well,
of
we've
the,
got
one of
trouble
the
with
things.
the Tollbridge fund.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we've
Yeah,
got a bank that we can actually walk in.
we want to do it ahead. They're at Canterbury. I've been there twice at Canterbury, and they're not very successful. Right? Go above Canterbury to get resolved.
I think there's a number that will be standing again, so at least we'll have some cover to take
Yes, I'm best saying, make sure we don't have a shortage of
Yeah.
signatures.
Of
That's all I'm
course,
saying.
we may all be voted out.
No,
Voted
no,
out.
no, no.
Completely new
No.
council. Who knows? Who
Go on,
knows?
man.
That's politics for you. So 8C, trustee to receive and approve a draft investor profile for submission to Harris Allday.
The only comment on this is that this was done before the budget was actually worked out at 165,000, so it just needs to be amended to reflect the.
Okay, so with that amendment, I'm happy to propose.
Well, I've got a couple of points to
Oh,
make,
so
sorry.
apologies.
First of all, page 98, you want to say chair, for me, chair of STBF Finance rather than chair of finance. I wouldn't quite get promoted to be chair of finance of STC. Page 98.
Yeah, correct.
And I'm a little bit puzzled by this description of what our investment knowledge and experience is. I thought we all filled in these things individually, but this seems to have lumbered us all as basic on page 102, and I think for some of us that might be inaccurate. And then it says signatory and trustee 1. I've no idea whether that is, but none of the other three. So I'm a bit puzzled by what this document is actually purporting to do.
Well, this document was prepared by Harris Allday. That was there. Those green ticks is the base document that they've provided with their assessment. Personally, I think it's in our interest to say that we have very limited understanding or experience of investing for kind of the charitable purposes. It's not something that I would want to take issue with, but I'm happy if
I'm really trying to understand how they've arrived at this conclusion, because of the four people that they fill in this extensive form, didn't we? And we all had varying levels. It's up to the meeting, but I just think it doesn't really reflect experience, but there we go.
I think for me it does. I don't know if this is a composite of all the applications, responses, because a number of us did it. Certainly for myself, I'm more comfortable with the assessment because I don't think I've got experience in derivatives, can't even say the word, hedge funds, etc. So I'm happy, but is that something that could be?
we can get clarification.
Councillor Wise.
So the target income is 120,000 a year, and the objective of the fund is to provide an income whilst preserving capital value. So if the income, if the capital value is not going to produce an income of 120, will Harris Allday reduce the income in order to preserve the capital value? And conversely, will they, if the income is more than 120,000, any surplus will go back into the fund?
Certainly the latter. The former, if it's not generating the income that we want, we need then to take a value decision whether to reduce the level of grants that are given.
So some years it might be down and some it might be up.
Yes, managing.
As a trustee, we have to manage
Yes,
that.
we do.
But the critical thing is preserving the value of the fund in line with inflation.
Yeah.
There's no more comments. It's to receive and approve a draft investor profile. So we have to propose that.
Sorry, like I say, we need to change this for this first year in terms of the
amount.
The amount.
Yes, sorry, with that amendment included.
So what is it being changed to?
160. 165.
Oh, 165.
Yes. Okay, somebody have to second that?
Happy to.
That's one abstention, one abstention. Yeah. Grant giving. Trustee to receive and approve a report on the agreement with KCF. And that is attachment 9A. Any comments? Because we have gone through this a number of times.
Yeah, this has been seen by everybody before, but we do need to get a wiggle on with this now in order to get KCF in place to meet the grants that we want to award in the autumn.
Is this been made to 1 year?
It's 2 years.
2 years.
A 2-year trial.
2 years trial.
Yep.
Have to
We need 2 years.
Yeah, because I think if we get a proper staff in, I think we
Yeah.
can do it.
And how much, sorry, quickly, how much in total in those 2 years are we giving them?
What in
As an admin
total?
fee or whatever it is?
I think if you go back to the budget, you'll see it on the budget.
8,000.
Yeah, something like that. It's on the budget. I can just go back to the budget.
We've got to accept, there's certain.
I ain't got to accept telling councillor Carter, we can, it's our choices.
Do we either accept it or vote against it?
I will vote against it.
£8,800 per annum.
And it's a 2-year trial, okay, that's fine.
Yep. And we have gone through this number of times, and we obviously had some bloodletting in the discussions, which is healthy. But we came to this agreement that we would use them, but for only a 2-year period to give us enough time to reflect on whether they are delivering the value that they present to us, and then we will review that at the end of the 2-year period.
They were highly recommended by Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, so, let's
Go on.
we don't want to go around that debate
So
again. Let's-
I negotiate with them as
Yeah,
a
we are here today where we are, we've made a decision,
Exactly.
and the amount is built into the budget.
And I'd like to stick to that decision.
Yeah. Oh, we are going to. So you're proposing, Councillor Ripley is seconded. We'll vote on that. We've got one abstention, two abstentions. Thank you. Trustee to receive and note a report on memorial suggestions. This is simply, I don't want us to go through these line by line. What this is proposing is a list that we currently got, which has been captured through a number of sources. The management of that is delegated to the management committee. So I'm happy to propose that we do that. Is somebody happy to second that we do that?
Just one point, the Sandwich Musical Events Association, who Maddox has funded for a stage, is going
Yes.
to call the stage the
They
Georgina
are.
Maddox stage.
And that will come out in discussions, I
That
think.
should be
So,
noted.
yeah. Seconded by Councillor Peacock. That is unanimous as well.
What we're doing there, 9B and 9C.
Yeah.
We've already voted on 9A, haven't we?
Yeah,
Yes, we
that's
have.
correct.
Yeah.
We're on 9B at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. 9C, the trustee to resolve to pay for the piano restoration. Again, we've had discussions on this, and we have proposed support for that. So, are there any new comments around this? No. So trustee to resolve to pay, so that's Councillor Wiles proposed, Councillor Franklin seconded. That's unanimous as well, thank you.
Sorry, there's 3 recommendations there. So we agree.
Apologies. No, we should
agree
go
on
on,
three,
I'll go
indeed.
on to that.
Because it's much more expensive.
Yeah, apologies. So the first, to approve completion of restoration of the Georgina Maddox Beckstein piano, including the case restoration. Proposed, Councillor Wiles and Councillor Marie seconded. Vote on that, that's unanimous. Secondly, to approve the outstanding expenditure set out in this report in connection with restoration of the piano, its relocation to the Georgina Maddox Gallery, and the installation of appropriate signage.
Proposed.
Proposed, Councillor Wiles seconded. And finally, to request the Georgina Maddox Management Committee to develop proposals, including estimated costs for an official opening event, and report back to trustee for approval. I propose that.
Second.
Councillor Marie seconded. That's unanimous as well. Thank you. Agenda item 10, enablers. Trustee to receive and approve a report on the recruitment of a charity administrator. So, just a slight update. I won't go through it because, in effect, the advert has been out via the website, via the STC Facebook page. I have received a number of inquiries. 4 applications came forward. I've received another inquiry today. So the next stage is for interviewing, and we agreed previously that the interviewers would be the town clerk, myself, and Councillor Wiles. I'm just trying to see what I've asked us to agree today.
Councillor Green.
No, it's the town clerk, I think, will qualify, but
I went
it
back
is.
to the minutes, it was
Yes.
Councillor Wiles and Ted Goshaw.
So we need to arrange interviews. So there is as I say, there's a 5th person that's raised their hand. My observations would be that some of these applicants are very far away from here. I don't know whether it's a drafting perspective, but I've had a number of inquiries from places like Tunbridge Wells. Cranbrook was the latest one today. But a couple of those have said they do want to be interviewed. When I've explained to them that it involves coming here at least 4 times a year for formal meetings and then other meetings that will be called. But there is also one person that is local as well that will be considered. So we've got potentially 4 interviews to undertake, which I think is healthy. Yeah, and they've all got, in various degrees, relevant experience in terms of supporting charities. So there are no random applications, they are all relevant applications. Is happy to note that report?
Note the report. I
Seconded.
suggest.
Councillor Fortescue. Thank you. The next one as trustee to consider appropriate IT arrangements. Is this a town
I'm
council?
sorry, I just ran out of time.
Okay, so,
I just didn't get anything sort of formally written down. Basically, what we were talking about in the office was that the best way to do it would be to purchase a Office 365 application. Basically, that would be the email address and put all the data on the cloud, so that if the trustee, the charity administrator were to change, you just change the password and then all the data would remain in the cloud. They would access that using their own device. If they were on basically as a self-employed clerk, they would provide the device to access the data which was stored in the cloud via the Office 365. And that we were talking about seemed to be the best way to go about. I spoke to Cloudy but didn't manage to get a response from them in time to produce a formal report. Yes, I'm sorry, but that's where we are.
As I say, can the next two items, that the IT one, the procurement one, be deferred to the management committee meeting? Because then hopefully the town clerk will have a bit more insight, possibly gives it a bit more time.
Yeah, by all means, I think, that's something for us to take up, and involve a charity administrator. There's also the website, which is pretty key.
so I'd like to, yes, sorry.
So happy for it to be deferred to management committee.
Well, although they did say the management committee may be later than the trustees, so I think we just defer it to the next meeting, either committee or trustee, to give enough time to scope out both of those. So I'd like to propose that we defer. Both of those. So unanimous. Meeting schedule, we've got that as attachment 11. I think there was one addition you were suggesting, Councillor Green, wasn't there?
Well, I think because of where we are in the formative stages of this charity, we should meet again in 2 months' time as the full trustee, early in September, as opposed to waiting until November. And next month is August, and with summer holidays and so forth, I propose that the next kind of meeting of the Maddox is in the first week in September.
I think that's reasonable, particularly as we'll be going into the grant giving period as well. If we leave it till November, I think we need to set our stall out in ahead of the grant applications, etc. So I'm happy to support that. Are there any counter views to meeting in September?
I was just thinking, we'll be doing interviews for the administrator. You might want to be in place
Oh yes.
before that, so we might need to have I don't know, you do it, Zoom meet or whatever. To confirm the applicant.
I think you're right. It shouldn't be down just to the panel of 3 to appoint the person. I think we need to report back to a meeting on the outcome of the interviews.
Would that be done on the just by email?
No. Can you by Zoom?
Just to do by Zoom.
Yep.
People on holidays might be able to get Zoom meet, might they?
We may well do.
Okay.
Depending where they are.
Alright, so that would be for you to advise.
Yes, I mean, I'm hopeful that we'll get the interviews completed in the next 3-week period, and hopefully then an appointment in by the middle of August at the latest. That will be my aim.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, you've been asked to consider what's proposed in front of us with the additions of a short meeting in terms of following the interview of candidates, and then also to add in a September meeting of the full trustee. If somebody's happy to propose that with those 2 amendments. Councillor Marie, Councillor Peacock seconded.
Can I just ask,
Yes.
what should we be doing? Because if the Maddox charity is independent of the council, should I be taking these meetings off the council website?
Very good point.
I would suggest yes.
Once we get to that point that we can transition it across, then we should, yes. But at the moment, for visibility, I think we should keep it on the council website.
Until we've got the new website up and running.
The trustee needs to approve going into full confidence before we can do that.
So we,
Oh, sorry.
we need to, because I need to put, these dates I was going to give to information officer to put into the STC magazine. But they need to probably go in as a separate,
Yes.
on a separate timetable to the STC dates, as it were. So Councillor Green, please could you forward me the dates as soon as possible, because the deadline is really was tomorrow, on Wednesday.
Okay, well, I need to work on that.
Can I make a suggestion? Instead of giving all the dates, can we give the first two? So the first Maddox Management Committee one, and also and then the first trustee one, just in case at the next ones we decide that we're going to go in confidence, and then so then the public aren't aware of the next set of dates.
At the moment, are all the dates showing?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion?
Of course.
I think the experienced people who regularly seek funds for things like stages and lighting and so on, they will know to come straight to Maddox. I do think there'll be quite a few places, say like the Angling Club or one of the clubs, who will not be quite so familiar. So I think for some period of time, if not in perpetuity, you would need to have a very clear, I would suggest you a very clear link between the STC website and Maddox. I'm not saying that STC hosts Maddox, but to have a very clear signboard, whatever the electronic term is, because a lot of people it's going to take them quite a while to understand that Maddox is not part of STC, because the assumption at the moment is, and we hear this time and time again, that people seeking money from it, STC can give us further money. We need to nail that down properly. So I wonder if that's of any help to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky grey area, really.
It is, of course. Yeah, but I'm trying to.
I think it's a very valid point, but as we stand at the moment, we don't have a separate communication tool, we don't have an administrator, so I think at the moment we do have to use the Town Council website as the portal for people to be aware of and able to access Maddox charitable funds.
So if I could have the dates up until sort of November, which when the next anticipated grant making
Yes,
dates, that would be good, so that I can put that into the Town Council magazine as an advert to flag that up to trustees. But Lindsay wants those by Wednesday.
We're in front of us, so you're going to do that, so that's up to you. Councillor Watts?
I'd be inclined to leave both STC and Maddox on the SDBF and Maddox on the STC website, because we as councillors are the trustees of both. They should be treated equally. They're both equally independent charities. I think if one's there and one's not, I think people might question what's happening.
So I'm raising.
We'll work through that when we get to that point. I don't think we should decide tonight, but I think there is an expectation that we will create a website. Obviously, we're going to have ACF also contacting local organisations, so we just need to work that through and understand how that actually works. But for today, nothing's changed, nothing new's added. We continue as we are with the SPC website.
Or at least a link which points people in the direction.
That's But could I just clarify? So within the list in front of us, 5th of August, we do have a management committee meeting. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got it listed there, but I don't think we're going to have advanced enough to do that.
Okay, so you're going to revise the list. So that's another amendment that we'll be voting on tonight. It's removing the date of the 5th of August, adding in those two further events, which is a full trustee meeting in September. You need to secure a date, and also a Zoom meeting, but we're not going to be able to quantify the date for that yet, or qualify the date for that yet. Okay, so does somebody have to propose that with those three amendments? Councillor Ripley, seconded. Councillor Franklin, and votes on that. Thank you very much. Which helpfully means means the last item is still valid, which is the date. So the next management committee meeting was going to be the 5th of August. We've now removed that. So the next meeting we currently have is in September, which we haven't again agreed a date on. So I'm struggling when the next meeting.
It would have to be confirmed then, doesn't it?
Yes, it doesn't have to be.
Should we have a look at the date?
I'll leave it for yourself to agree with council agreement. There will be council activities to avoid.
It said there, so it said at the bottom that as well, obviously locations to be agreed. So that just to clarify, the charity's address will be the Guildhall, 1, and 2, the locations for the meetings will be here, in this building.
No, that we may decide to meet elsewhere as the trustee going forward. I don't think it's automatic.
The registered address of the charity is obviously the Guildhall, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that should be means that the Guildhall would be its locations for the meetings, surely.
Not
necessarily in this chamber, but
Not necessarily.
No. Or in a room combination.
Yeah, different discussion at a different time, but you're right to flag that one up, definitely. Okay, so unless there's any more comments, meeting is closed. Thank you very much.